Hello and welcome back to The Load-In, a United Theater podcast with me, your host, Lee Metzger. Today we're back in the office and we're talking about some more upcoming events that are super cool, but I needed a little bit of help, so I pulled in good friend, longtime collaborator, and personal mentor, Tim Cotter. Tim is going to join us to talk about some of these cool upcoming events, so stick around and we're going to get into that after this. It's The Load-In. All right, so now we're going to be talking to Tim Cotter about some of these upcoming events. Tim, thank you so much for joining me. How are you today?
Wonderful, nice spring/summer day.
It's true. First time on the show. Thanks for coming in.
I know. I feel the pressure.
Well, let's dive right in. What sort of events do you have for us today?
Well, I was thinking about some of the topics that you had mentioned, and I thought, the United brings in acts from all over the country. You just did alt comedy where they were from California. We've got a band coming in from the Congo, and we have a lot of touring bands from all over the country. But one of my favorites a lot of times are the real local ones where we're able to shine a spotlight on local people. There's so many people in the South County and southeastern Connecticut area that are so skilled and so talented, and sometimes you don't even know that they're here. And one that we've got coming up on the 30th is a documentary called A Double Life. And the woman who did the documentary is from Salem. She's a University of Connecticut professor. Although she's traveled the world, some of her best documentaries were made in Bangladesh. So she did a documentary, Catherine Masud, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. She did a documentary on her uncle, who was from Salem also, Stephen Bingham. And the Binghams are a big name in Connecticut. Stephen Bingham's grandfather was a U.S. senator and the governor. But anyway, Stephen was a young lawyer and did a lot of social justice work and was at San Quentin Prison in California. And the day after he visited an inmate that he was trying to help, San Quentin erupted in violence, the most violent prison riot in California history. And they concluded that since he was the last person to see this prisoner, that he must have smuggled in a gun. So they arrested him. And Stephen Bingham thought, this is 1971, he thought, I'm in trouble. With the political climate the way it is, I'm going to jail, even though I didn't do it. So he split. And I don't want to give away too much. That's kind of all out there in the trailer and all the publicity on the documentary. But Catherine at one point thought, I should do my uncle's story. And it is an incredible story that most people around here and in Connecticut weren't aware of. So that's the documentary, and we're lucky enough that not only is she going to come and speak to people afterwards, but Stephen Bingham, who now lives in California, and I don't know, he might be 80, but he's going to be in Connecticut, so he's going to join us. So that after the movie, after the documentary, both of those people will be available to have a conversation with the audience, which is one of our niches. As you know, we try to not only show a movie or have a performance, but bring that extra element to it. So I think that's going to be a great one. I'm really looking forward. My wife and I are going to come and we're really looking forward to seeing that.
You're absolutely right about being surprised by some of the world-class people that we just have in this area. It's always so surprising to me. Like this past weekend, you talked about Alt Comedy Fest. We had Dale DeGroff is King Cocktail, world-renowned mixologist, lives a couple miles away. We had Soupy Fest a couple months ago. One of the biggest names in online culinary world Brad Leone was one of our judges a couple miles up the road. It's always so surprising.
Yeah, and Max Finance, who's doing our Harposium series, one of the few master cicerones in the world.
Yeah, I think
and
there's
he's from Ledyard, and when we found that out, we were like, "What?" You know?
Exactly. A couple miles up the road, but one of like 3 dozen of that rank of professional. It's insane that they're again a couple miles up the road.
Yeah, and these people always are very willing to come, and do a program here, and they love talking to other local people.
Mm-hmm.
I love that too.
Yeah, that's going to be a really, really compelling event and film. We're all looking forward to that. And then at the beginning of June, on June 9th, we have another really exciting event.
Yeah, Steve Fagin, who actually is also from Ledyard, like Max, who we just talked about. Some people know that I worked at the Day for most of my career, and so did Steve. And Steve was a reporter and editor and very talented journalist. He retired before I did. He's a little older than I am. But he kept working at the Day as a copy editor and as an outdoorsman column, which is very popular. He's been doing it for years now. And so anyway, when I heard that he took Appalachian Mountain Club's hiking guide, which is considered by a lot of hikers as really the Bible.
Sure. Well, the Appalachian Trail is
right.
One of the most famous trails in North America.
Right. And I get, makes sense. They update them every so often because new trails are made and some trails disappear. And so Steve was hired to update Connecticut's. And I think he pitched, can I add some in Rhode Island? He had, I think, done everything in Connecticut, and he started hiking in southern Rhode Island a lot just to discover new trails. And so he added 14 Rhode Island trails to this guide, including some in Westerly, Hopkinton, Wakefield, all the towns that we're familiar with. And it's an incredible guide. I mean, I was looking at it, and the amount of detail on every hike, on how to get there, what you'll find when you get there. So he's going to be with us. He has a PowerPoint. He always takes photos. He's a real Renaissance guy. He built stone walls on his property. He taps his maple trees for syrup.
That's cool.
He hikes and mountain climbs and kayaks like nonstop, and he's a great guy. So I think that's going to be a real fun presentation. The amount of trails, my wife and I do a lot of them in South County, and the amount of trails in Connecticut and Rhode Island is just incredible.
Well, Connecticut is a very unique geological area, and I've just only recently started to explore Rhode Island. I went to Ninigret Park the other day to see the trolls,
right?
Thomas Danbo's trolls, and I legitimately was like, I had no idea of how big that park was.
Yeah,
it is massive, and just the amount of like beautiful vistas that you can just happen across if you're just walking in the middle of the woods, and then boom, there's the beautiful like sound. And
just a little piece of obscure trivia, but the older Bush learned how to fly a plane there for the war, because that's what it was. And you can still see, if you walked around enough, the black tops where they
HW,
where they landed. But yeah, there's a beautiful hike there that goes right out to the pond, and that pond is gorgeous. And that park is actually on the National Flyway, I think they call it, where birds that are going back and forth stop there. So you never know some people know. I never know what's going to be on the pond when you get out there, but it's always some huge flock of birds that are taking a break.
Yeah. And some people with binoculars around their necks.
Yes, and yes, a lot of serious birders go there, But and there's hikes like, and you're right about Connecticut and Rhode Island being unique in that you can be on the water, you can be inland. There's just all sorts of different terrain. I mean, we're both pretty flat, but there's a lot of different terrain and a lot of different hikes that you can do. And it's always good to know a little bit before you head out. So these guides, a great resource, and you can complete one by one if you want. And Steve is an expert.
Yeah.
No doubt about that.
So you have any questions regarding those kinds of things, then this is the event to go to. Quick piece of trivia for the Loden fans out there. Connecticut has the largest concentration of quartz in the world. And at Lantern Hill, it's built on this massive quartz deposit. So write that one down.
Yes. Have you ever seen the Morris dancers who once a year go to the top of Lantern Hill and do this kind of wacky dance?
No.
Okay.
The Morris?
The Morris dancers, yes.
Morris dancers.
They get up at the break of dawn, and
Morris dancing is a form of English folk dance. It's based on rhythmic stepping and the execution of choreographed figures by a group of dancers in costume.
Yes.
So it's not just like a family whose last name is Morris?
No, it's a group that are in costume that do this high step and dance.
Because when you said the Morris dancers, I immediately am thinking of some freaky family
that goes up the mountain and dances.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll let you know next time they're going to do it. And
yeah.
You can. We'll head out there.
Yeah, we'll pop up.
We'll climb Lantern Hill.
I've been looking for a reason to break out my Morris costume, so that would be.
You would look good in one. Yeah.
I was told in high school that I have dancer's legs.
There you go.
I was just telling this story to. It's not much of a story. It's a bit of an anecdote, but I've been dining out on that one little piece of one. That's the amount of difference that you can have in a child's life. If you see a lone youth walking down the street, tell them they have dancer's legs. Actually, you know what? Don't do that. Never mind. Don't tell teens that they have dancers. Don't comment on people's appearances, actually, in general. But
note that we will edit this out later. But
at the end of June, we have another event.
Yeah, Carla Panciera, who is kind of a friend of my wife Betty and I, and a fantastic writer. And Carla grew up in Westerly, but has lived a lot of her life in Massachusetts, where she was a high school teacher, and she's just retired. She's written a lot of poetry. That if you're a fan of poetry, or even not, I'm not a big poetry guy, and I find her poetry wonderfully composed. But she's written, last year it came out, but she's written a memoir, because she grew up on a dairy farm here in town. And I think, if I'm getting this right, it's where Walmart is now. So the farm is gone. But the memoir is this wonderful story about her and her father. She was the one kid in the family interested in the herd and learning things, and she would go out and help her father milk the cows. And they had this one bull that it was kind of famous in New England. They would take it to county fairs, and it would win ribbons. And it's a very easy read, and just a great glimpse at kind of the old days,
how things used to be
in Westerly, before the farms disappeared. And Carla's wonderful. She gives great talks, And the book will be available, but you can come. You don't have to buy a book to come, and if you've already read the book, you can come. But we're doing a lot of author events, as I'm sure our fans know, and this one's local, and I think it's... Oh, and I guess I should give my wife a plug, because she knows Carla and my wife's a writer. It's going to be a conversation between the two of them, which will make it a little different, because Carla has done other book signings in the area, so that'll make it a little different. And
more of like a in conversation with.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Very conversational event. I'm sure she'll, read from the book too. And that is our sponsor in that is the Dante Society, which is great, which also makes it even more local. And I'm sure a lot of them will be here. And another great local event. Someone that grew up here, grew up on a farm.
Mm-hmm.
And turned, through a lot of hard work and education, became this great writer in my mind.
Yeah.
Not well known, but that's kind of how that industry works. And again, that's another one that I'm really looking forward to seeing her.
Yeah. I mean, you want to talk about Cup Runneth Over. This area has so many great local writers. We had Lindsay McElwicky on last week from Bank Square Books, and she was talking about all these panels that they're hosting at the library at Westerly Public Library. And again, just like all of these like terrific world-class authors. And if you're looking for, if you're interested in trying to, ingratiate yourself with these communities, we have the Michael DePaula Literary Salon coming up in the middle of June as well. There is a big group of people who share prose and poetry and acoustic music that all meet there. I believe that's on the 17th, I want to say. Or no, on the 5th, rather. On June 5th, we'll be having that. So if you're interested in getting involved with that group of people, definitely come by on June 5th for Michael DePaula Literary Salon.
That's a great event, too. And these book events also a great event if you're an aspiring writer, and there's a lot of people who are. A lot of people when they get, my age or older, start thinking, I'd like to write down some of my life, even if it's just to leave it for my grandkids, But the one of the better ways to learn how to really write is to listen to other writers, and Betty and I go to a lot of book talks, and she always asks them, what's your writing process, and everybody's is different, but she's intrigued by that. And, so, I mean, if you're an aspiring writer, you should read a lot, and then you learn how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But coming and listening to these authors and having an audience with them and being able to ask them anything you want is
incredible
a
resource.
Yeah.
So be on the lookout for those events coming up here at the United Theater. Tim, at the end of the show, I like to go on to Apple Podcasts and see if anyone has written a review of the show. So I'm going to do that now. Would you care to stick around for that?
Sure.
Excellent. All right, so let's take a look here. No one has wrote a review. So if you would like your review to be read aloud here on the show live, make sure to go to Apple Podcasts, write a review, give us 5 stars, or as many stars as you think we deserve, probably 5 after this.
4.5 anyway.
Yeah, at least. Get those numbers up. And thank you for listening. Tim, thank you so much for joining us. Do you have a blog or anything that you want to plug? Do you have a personal do you have a personal YouTube channel that you or your TikTok? Do you have your TikTok going?
No, I'm not on TikTok. I'm very low key as far as all of that goes. But my wife blogged for quite a while. She hasn't done it in a bit though, about writing.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to search Betty Cotter, Cotter. And Carla actually, Panciera, who's coming, has a great blog. So if you search for her, you'll probably find that.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And we'll link those out in the show notes. So if you're looking for those, check out the show notes to find out more about that stuff. Tim, thank you so much for joining us.
Anytime.
Everyone out there, thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching on YouTube and Instagram, and we will see you next time. Bye. Thanks for tuning in to the United Theater Podcast Network. If you enjoyed this episode, we encourage you to subscribe to our show so you never miss an episode. And if you could take a moment to leave a review, we'd greatly appreciate it. Your feedback helps us create content that you love. So hit that subscribe button and leave us a review, and we'll see you on the next episode.